Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, and no, the Montreal Canadiens will not get swept. They did not get swept on home ice. They won Game 4 in dramatic fashion, 3-2 in overtime. Joining me right now on the Sick Podcast to talk about it, from Habs Eyes on the Prize, Andrew Zadarnowski. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Tony. I am glad you invited me on this podcast. I am glad we're not doing a post-mortem. I am glad we're talking about the next day. And this is a tremendous, tremendous feeling. The concern that Montreal would be swept in the finals was somewhat starting to creep into my mind after Game 3, but they proved that they still have some magic left in them.
It's the Sick Podcast, and the show is brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and use code SICKPOD for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia, beyond organic sleep. It's funny because the last episode of the Sick Podcast, I actually did it from the Essentia showroom because the Tampa Bay Lightning had put the Montreal Canadiens to sleep. The Canadiens were very much awake on Monday night at the Bell Center.
Yeah, and the response initially, it started a little slow, and you're kind of worried about how it would go. And that first period, Montreal wasn't getting any shots on net. Tampa was kind of choking them out, getting the crowd out of it, totally playing their game plan. But that Josh Anderson goal really woke everyone up and really started that Habs momentum that carried on through the game. And if you look at it, really, the key player to start that play on that first goal was Brett Kulak, the player on defense who just joined the playoffs. He's been on the bench since Merrill and Gustafsson have been given the go-ahead for most of these playoffs. He's the one that coolly and calmly danced around a Tampa player to get that puck out of the Habs zone, move it up ice, and, puck movement from the D. What do you know? It works.
Well, you talked about puck movement from the D, but also puck movement from one very own Nick Suzuki, number 14. That play on the first goal by Josh Anderson, of Suzuki showing the patience and calm and poise with the puck, with the defender sliding in front of him and going around the defender, and then that pass to Josh Anderson, that was unbelievable. And it should be noted, by the way, there were lineup changes for Game 4. There were line changes for Game 4. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, a healthy scratch. The same for Merrill, the same for Gustafsson. In Jake Evans, Brett Kulak, and Alexander Romanov. Line changes, Suzuki centering Caulfield on his right and Josh Anderson on his left. And Josh Anderson finishes with 2 goals, 2 assists for Nick Suzuki, for Caulfield, 1 assist for Suzuki. The coach looked like a genius last night.
Yeah, and the concern was, and I talked about this on Sunday morning on 690, is that I didn't think there would be many lineup changes. A lineup change in an elimination game can be a sign of panic. It could be a sign of decisions of last resort, just kind of try to survive. But it looks like the changes that Dominic Ducharme brought to the lineup actually paid huge dividends for Montreal, and it wasn't any kind of, I don't think, panic in decision-making. It was really a thought-through decision. And I think that every single player that was inserted into the lineup added something to this team to bring this series to Game 5.
And you know what? Listen, I thought everyone played well, but I have to say, Shea Weber, that's probably the most spirited a game I've ever seen him play as a Montreal Canadian. There was no tomorrow for Shea Weber, and I know he still has 5 years left on his contract, but he may never make it to another Stanley Cup final again with the Canadiens or just for the rest of his career. The physicality, one hit in particular on Braden Point, a couple of hits on the same shift. If you could take a picture, and a shout out to Excellent Photos, centrally located downtown Montreal, close to the downtown shopping and university, ships to all of Canada, professional staff at the store online to help you choose the gear you really need. It's excellentphoto.ca. If there's one picture I would want from that game, it would be Weber obliterating Braden Point, who took a beating in Game 4, Andrew.
Yeah, and the Habs focused on obviously the scoring threats, and Montreal needed to bring physicality to this series. And if anyone is capable of adding physicality to this series, it's Shea Weber. And the work that Shea Weber has done to build his reputation with the fan base, I mean, we can go all the way back to the trade when Subban was dealt for Weber. That divided the fan base. That kind of created factions within the Habs fan base. And if this playoff run has done anything, it has really built up the stock of Shea Weber with the doubters. The depth that Montreal has gone in these playoffs has brought back legions of fans, maybe made new fans. I think that this playoff run and the way Shea Weber has presented himself has eliminated any further question of the PK Subban trade.
Well, the trade was made just over 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago, late June of 5 years ago. Mind you, you're still going to have some people talking about Weber next year, the year after, because of course he's got 5 years left. But he really has shown his worth in these playoffs where he's been unbelievable. The shirt that I'm wearing says double shift your best players. The Canadiens have done that with Weber, Sherratt, Edmondson, and Petrie. They've double shifted their best defensemen. Last night was among the most physical games I've seen the defense play. Ben Sherratt had 9 hits, and every one of them hurt.
And that's the way that Montreal has to play. That top four has done great to get them as far as they did, but now every single game is the game of no tomorrow. And that's the way they have to look at it. They must continue their strategy. They must continue going down the path that they're going, the path that led them to success. But every game has now got to be played with a level of not desperation. I shouldn't say desperation, but a level of do not worry about tomorrow because there may not be a tomorrow. And Montreal proved it with the game yesterday, an absolute gut check of a game. And it was just tremendous to see.
Canadiens gear, Lightning gear, any sport gear, sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and more. Use code 615 for 15% off on all of their items. Hey, look, wasn't a perfect game. I thought the Montreal Canadiens, from a discipline point of view, got themselves in a little bit of trouble. 5 times they sent the Tampa Bay Lightning on the power play. Notably, Shea Weber, though, high sticking call. The score is tied at 2. There's just over a minute to go in regulation, and Weber gets called 4 minutes for high sticking. At that point, Tampa Bay scores in the final minute. The game's over. Tampa Bay scores in the overtime. The game's over. But the Canadiens' penalty kill, Andrew, rose to the occasion.
I mean, the game yesterday reminded me of why Montreal is playing in the finals. Their penalty kill in the first 3 rounds was it was called the best ever in terms of its percentages. And this series they've been kind of struggling, let's say, to contain the Kucherovs and the better elements of the Tampa Bay offense. But yesterday's game, that penalty kill just rose up to the occasion again and just absolutely shut it down. And like Dominic Ducharme said, they were going to kill that 4-minute penalty for Captain Weber. That was their determining factor, that they were not going to allow a goal. They weren't not going to allow his chance at a Stanley Cup to end on a high stick.
And you know what they say, your best penalty killer is your goaltender. Show me a great goalie, I'll show you a great penalty kill. Carey Price, I thought, somewhere along the line in this final, had lost his mojo. I thought goal number 1 and goal number 2 of game number 3 were shots that Price normally would save, and he didn't. He looked a little off. He looked a little rattled. Even Kelly Rudy was showing replays of his lateral movements and stuff like that where it just wasn't fluid. He was giving up juicy rebounds. He was looking behind him. He wasn't sure of himself. I don't know about those 2 days rest, but they did a ton of good for Carey Price, because in game 4, I saw the Carey Price that we saw in the playoffs up until the final.
Yeah, and thankfully, it's just been a rough little bump for Carey Price and not a total slide, because what we saw in game 4, it was the Price that got the Montreal Canadiens past Toronto. It was the Carey Price that got them past Vegas. It was the Carey Price that got them to the finals. It was finally the Carey Price that other teams start to panic and overthink their shots on. And that's what Montreal needed to do. And on the opposite end of things, you had Alexander Romanov's goal, which was just a shot from the point.
Yeah.
And, Vasilevsky tends to be beat on just shots from the point. Montreal started overthinking things and they started panicking a bit. And that's why, game 2 got away from them. Well, game 2 got away from them because of mistakes, but game 3 got away from them because they were overthinking things. They think they got to get nervous. They had the fans behind them, all that adrenaline, all that, energy, and they didn't know how to use it to the best of their abilities. They didn't know how to they were overthinking things rather than just put the puck on net, see what happens. And Alexander Romanov, that's how he scored that goal. He just put the puck on net, see what happens. The Tampa scored a few like that on Price. Why can't Montreal score a few like that on Vasilevsky?
He's Andrew Zadarnowski of Habs Eyes on the Prize. I'm Tony Marinaro. It's the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, and you can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app and watch us on all social media platforms. It's funny because it was probably last week I spoke with Lightning insider Eric Erlinson, and we talked about Vasilevsky's weakness. It looked early on like the Canadians were trying to go upstairs, glove side on Vasilevsky. And Eric told us early on in Vasilevsky's career, his glove hand would be low, and they tried to work on that so that his glove could come a little bit higher. What Eric did say is Vasilevsky has a tendency, like you just said, to get beat on long shots. And now we've seen several long shots that have beat him. And if I'm the Canadians, I'm Dominic Ducharme, I'm telling him, you don't need to look for the perfect shot. Just try and get it on net, even if it means from far, especially from far.
Exactly. Really getting pucks on net, that's how you're going to score your goals. Overthinking things, playing perimeter, shifting the puck around, you're not going to get a goal that way. You put them on net sometimes when you can't find the right play. Really what you got to worry about is a big juicy rebound or a rebound that goes the other way where they break out of the zone on an odd man rush. Other than that, you put the puck on net and hope that it hits something along the way and beats him behind, between the pads, or, honestly, you aim for that little sweet spot just above the pad, just below the blocker or glove. That's where you're going to beat him.
It's the Sick Podcast, and there were a lot of Lightning fans. Well, not a lot of Lightning fans, but there were several sections. I was at the game, Andrew. I was lucky enough to be in attendance, and I wasn't supposed to be an hour before the game. I'm at home. I'm relaxing. A buddy calls me. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm relaxing." He says, "I have a previous engagement. I have a couple of tickets. I want to give them to somebody that I know will enjoy it." So just like that, boom, got up, got dressed, brushed my teeth, do my hair, get dressed, and make my way to the Bell Center and get there just in time. And I was in section 111, row E. And to my right, a little bit higher up, there was a section there, I would imagine. It was Tampa Bay Lightning family and friends section. They were all there with all their Lightning jerseys, and you could tell who they were there for with all their numbers. I have it on good information that they had reached out to Sophistication Event Rentals, live music, DJs, sound systems, tents, chairs, tables, decor, lighting, photo booth, TV screens, everything. And you could call them at 570-5770. I'm hearing they probably did. They were planning a big party, Andrew. But this Montreal Canadiens team that has shown so much pride throughout the playoffs, there's no way they wanted the Stanley Cup to come out on their ice on Monday night.
No. The only time I believe that Stanley Cup was ever presented to the opposing team in Montreal was the Calgary Flames in 1989. And I'm very, very sure that the Montreal Canadiens were not willing to repeat that part of history. Although a lot of history was being repeated in these playoffs, the wink and the buddy hug after a goal, and yesterday's Josh Anderson's celebration on his back reminding me of Alex Kovalev's celebration in that historic comeback against the Rangers. I'm sure they weren't willing to relive the shame of the 1989 final. So I'm not surprised at the result. I absolutely knew that this team would be able to pull out at least one win and not be swept.
All right. I'm sure we'll talk about this more when the season is over, but are you at all concerned with Brendan Gallagher? We know that he has a role. We know he's been given a role. We know that the importance for him to score goals, it's not as important now as it used to be because they acquired Tyler Toffoli and Josh Anderson, guys that can give him a shot in the arm and could probably take over the load in that respect. Are you at all concerned? Or do you believe that Gallagher can get back to his scoring ways during the season, but he's just embracing the role they gave him in the playoffs?
The only thing that concerns me about Gallagher is whether he's going to fall apart or how much tape is holding him together. That guy has absolutely put his body out on the line for this team for his entire career and this playoff run specifically. We know he went into the playoffs not 100%. And during these playoffs, he's absolutely taken a beating, a hammering, but he's done his job as he does every game. if there's ever a model of consistency and a model of implication and heart on this team, it's Brendan Gallagher. So I'm not concerned about the regular season. During the regular season, he'll keep being Brendan Gallagher, and at that level, at that pace, he will score his goals again. But during this playoff run, him and Phil Danault have been absolutely instrumental in shutting down opposing offense, and that's been a role that they've absolutely embraced. And if anyone is just looking at stat lines and saying Gallagher and Danault aren't producing, they're nuts because they're not watching the games.
Well, surprisingly, though, Tyler Toffoli was playing left wing on their line. That was another line change by Dominic Ducharme. And then he had Evans in between Lehkonen and Paul Byron and made that kind of a second shutdown line. But now the line of Danault, Gallagher, Toffoli, they're trying to get Toffoli going. Mm-hmm. He was going in Series 1, Series 2, and Series 3. He's having a really hard time in the final. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel for Tyler Toffoli? Do you expect him to break out the way Josh Anderson broke out on Monday night?
At this point, it's the entire team contributing. I would hate to isolate one player to saying he has to score goals. It's really got to be the whole team that plays a full game, full 60-minute game, and the goals will come. And whether they come from a Paul Byron or an Arturi Lehkonen or a Tyler Toffoli, from the top to the bottom of the lineup, as long as they play their style and they dictate the pace and they don't get lost and overthink things, guys will score. I know Toffoli's he's paid to be the scorer, but as long as he is not causing goals to be scored upon Montreal, there will be someone else to pick up that slack and score the goal. At the end of the day, it's the whole team that lifts the Stanley Cup. So whether Toffoli scores or whether Evans scores or whether Romanov scores, I don't care as long as Montreal scores those goals. And it'd be great to see the offense coming from the players you expect it to, but it's also great when it comes from the players you don't expect it to.
So now the big question, on Wednesday night in Game 5, will the Tampa Bay Lightning take out their cases of Cherry River hard seltzer, only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives, available in Quebec grocers and even at the beer store? I was in Ottawa on the weekend, walked into the beer store, and I said, how's the Cherry River selling? And they said, it's off the charts. So my big question to you is, on Wednesday night, will they pour some of this in the cup and sip from the cup? Yes or no? And why do you think what you think?
Hope is a dangerous thing, as I said before we went on the air. Montreal getting swept, that would have been brutal. Montreal winning one game, well, what's stopping them from winning two games now? I remember Game 2 against Tampa. Montreal played an absolutely near perfect game, minus two major mistakes that cost them the game. If they could play a full 60-minute game like that again, and if they just seize on their opportunities, avoid the penalty box, avoid mental cramps, make sure that I almost call him Patrick Roy. Make sure Carey Price is on top of his game. I don't see why Montreal couldn't drag out this series to another game. Tampa Bay is still a very, very good team with a lot of very, very good players. But at this point, I'm no longer as convinced that Montreal is going to bow out of this series quite easily.
If Dominic Ducharme hasn't changed the winning lineup in the past, at times he didn't even change a losing lineup. I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And would you expect to see the same lineup for Game 5 as you saw in Game 4, which means Evans is still in, Kulak's still in, and Romanov is still in?
I think so. I mean, at this point, I'm done questioning Dominic Ducharme's lineup decisions. He knows which players are working, which ones aren't. I wouldn't be too surprised if Kotkaniemi's back in the lineup, but at the same time, like you said, he doesn't change a winning lineup, so I won't be too surprised if Evans stays in. I think Dominic Ducharme has got the pulse of this team. He knows how they think. He knows how they react. He knows what to expect of them. Let's not forget that Dominic Ducharme missed a couple of games in the series, and that's when the team started faltering. So with him back behind the bench, being the driving force of this team, we may see a lot more positive coming out of it, whether it's the same lineup or whether there's an adjustment to be made for Game 5.
If Tampa Bay wins on Wednesday night and you're a betting man and you can go to place your bets on MyBookie, go to mybookie.ag/the Sick Podcast and use code SickPicks for a 50% deposit bonus. Bet, win, get paid. If they win on Wednesday night, who do you think will win the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player of the playoffs?
Kucherov. Without a doubt, I think Kucherov is showcasing his total skill set as a player who missed the entire season and is still able to come back and dominate from game one of the playoffs. He's among the top elite talents in the league right now, and I think he will get that nod for his playoff contribution.
Well, you know what I look forward to? I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. If I were to put $1 or $2 on my bookie, I would say that Carey Price will play once again the game of his life, because let's face it, Andrew, for the Canadians to win the Stanley Cup, he's going to have to steal them. He really has no other choice. He cannot let in any bad goals. This Tampa Bay Lightning team is too good to be able to spot a bad goal or two. We've seen that. He was on his game in game 4. They won. If they're going to win game 5, he's going to have to be on his game as well. I expect a low-scoring game. Andrew, cheers. A little Cherry River will get you a case, and hopefully the Montreal Canadiens can force a game 6 at the Bell Center. Wouldn't that be something, huh?
I would love it. I'm sure the fans would love it. What a great way to come out of this pandemic to celebrate a deep playoff run. I am thrilled for the fans of Montreal. I am happy for everyone. I mean, it's been a rough 2 years practically here. I can't even put into words how happy I am that Montreal has this playoff run right now, given everything that the team has gone through, what the fans have gone through from a personal point of view, from a sporting point of view. Man, it's great.
They're going to have to win the next 3 in a row. Do you believe? You know what they say? Don't stop believing. And it'll take us out. Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Andrew Zadarnowski of Habs Eyes on the Prize. Thanks for doing this, man.
Take care, guys.
Cheers, bud. The Montreal Canadiens have forced a game 5. Let's hope they can force a game 6. Don't stop believing. Marinaro saying cheers. Bleu, blanc, rouge.